Hello everyone and welcome back to Showverse. My name is Haley Morales and today we are going over Arrow Season 3. Reminder, there are spoilers for Arrow Season 1, 2, and Flash Season 1. Alright. Also remember to check out our website and the description down below for anything that we're doing lately. Right now we have a Kickstarter going and I believe an Indiegogo going. Another Kickstarter to come soon. Please subscribe to the newsletter on our website to be caught up with everything that we're doing during the month. Those are sent out within the first week of every month, and I also write them, so yay. Please remember there is a written blog post that goes along with this, so if maybe you're looking at this timestamp and you're like, that looks a little long, you can always head over to the website and read mostly the same thing. I do say a few more things in the video than I do in the blog post, but that's because they're my little ramblings that I add on. So it's completely up to you. That is available to you if you so wish. Otherwise, I think that's it. Let's get into Arrow Season 3. Reminder, spoilers. Lots and lots of spoilers. So we see the team are trying to stop a truck that has some RPGs or rocket-powered grenades, I think, and they're trying to stop it. We see Roy is in a brand new suit. He's in like a red leather outfit, kind of similar to Oliver's, but he's got like some lacing and stuff on the side. It's very nice. Oliver and Felicity are acting very close after the admission of feelings that ended the last season. I mean, Oliver did say that that was just a way to get Slade to kidnap Felicity so that she could stab him with a thing, but like, they're acting very close. And Oliver even makes an arrowhead necklace for Deagle and Lila's baby, which if you remember at the end of last season, we found out that Lila was pregnant with Deagle's baby. And now they're like expecting very, very soon. Like Lila's got a visible tummy now because the summer has passed. Very exciting times. Deagle expresses to Oliver that he should tell Felicity his feelings, but for like real this time and not, takesy backsies. We also see at the end of last season, Lance had something wrong with him and he had to go to the hospital. He's walking with a cane now. Turns out he's got something wrong with his heart and he's taking pills and has monitoring from doctors. But he is also captain now, so he doesn't even have to do field work. I mean, he wants to do field work, but like, he can't physically anymore. But he made it to captain. How exciting. And Lance holds a press conference to officially disband the vigilante task force that was set up to hunt the Arrow. That does mean, I guess he probably only recently became captain and like was able to finally have enough pull to actually stop this task force, because like the whole summer has gone by. They didn't do anything about it, but he expresses his thanks for all the things that Arrow has done for the city. And yeah, no, this was a great time. It's a great time. We see a man on the scene with a new strain of vertigo. Why come up with a new drug when you can just keep reusing the same name and just being like, I reformulated it. It's new now, but I'm still calling it vertigo. But it makes you see your greatest fear. So I don't know how he expected to like sell this drug. Probably didn't, because like, I don't know too many people that would buy a drug that makes you see your greatest fear, but and Oliver stopped his truck at the beginning of the episode, so he put a tracker on him, and Oliver asks Felicity on a dinner date, which is very exciting and cool. We do also see that Felicity works at a knockoff Best Buy now, since Queens Consolidated is no longer, big company and stuff. And Yeah, she's out helping customers, and then she'll be like, 1 second, goes in the back room, types some things for the Arrow, and then runs back out. And she meets a man named Roy, who is looking for... No, Ray. She meets Ray. And he's looking for some stuff to go to do some computer techie things and get through like a firewall. And she helps him out. Because she's like, this isn't going to work. If you want this thing, you might as well wait till next month when the better version comes out, but you don't even need it. You can do it this way, this way, this way. So she lost her place of sales. Not the best. Like, she might be super smart, but like, she did lose a sale. Oliver has upgraded his bow. It now folds up nice and neat, which is helpful because he puts it in his bag and he hides it somewhere in the restaurant during his and Felicity's dinner date. They're like nervous messes because like everything you would talk about on a first date, they've talked about 100 times over. And they're just awkward about what they should be and stuff. But Oliver says that Felicity is the first person he could trust since the island, which is very sweet. Until that new guy selling Vertigo, who put a tracker thing on his, it blows up the restaurant. Because he took his costume with him and put him in the back of the restaurant so they knew he was in there. They just blew the whole place up. Lance is still trying to find excuses to get back in the field by helping the Arrow. Like I said, he doesn't actually want to be on the sidelines. He just kind of has to be. Oliver gets injected with the new Vertigo and he sees himself. Yeah, he's his own greatest fear on like what he can be and can he be both Arrow and Oliver Queen and still like have a normal life and all that. All of these things going through his mind while he's trying to fight himself, which is technically the dude fighting. There are more than once where this guy injects somebody with, because he comes back very, very, very later on the season, where he injects someone with Vertigo and then he fights. And he doesn't always have, like, the stuff used in the fight on him. Or he doesn't normally, like, he wouldn't move like the person's greatest fear. And I don't know, it's very strange. I don't know. But maybe they're just thinking they got hit with a pole when really he just, like, smacked them. I don't know. But, you know, that's for the writers to figure out, I guess. Oliver is trying to get control of Queen Consolidated back. And he has this whole, like, plea of, like, you know, this is in the family, and I'm here to do what's best for the company and all that. And Ray Palmer from the knockoff Best Buy that I just talked about, he shows up. We find out he's Ray Palmer, notorious billionaire, and he puts in a bid for the company. Turns out he used those hacking things that he talked to Felicity about. Hack into Queen Consolidated to get their real numbers, not the fancy ones they would send to shareholders, like their real numbers to see that they've been going down, and he has a way to get them to go up, and it includes changing Starling City to Star City. You know, just like any bad apartment complex that wants to hide from all the negative reviews, you just change the name and keep operating no problem, which is basically what he plans on doing. Starling City is full of 2 terrorist attacks in as many years. You know, maybe they need to move on. So he's literally proposing what shitty apartment complexes in a college town does. But hey, you know, it works for them. They're still in business. Oliver does no longer wants Deagle to be going out in the field now that he's a new father. And at first, Deagle's upset about this until his baby is born. And he said, as soon as I laid eyes on her, like, my whole world changed. And I would have wanted to get out of the field anyway. So he eventually becomes thankful. But for now, a little mad about it. little mad about it. Makes sense. Don't want to be just knocked out of the field. Especially if you don't think, like, you should. Like, initially it feels like Oliver's just being overprotective, but you have a new baby. You gotta take care of the baby. Little tiny girl. Oliver is retreating back into himself emotionally after that bomb. Because after the restaurant got blown up, because of course he does. He like shuts down, he gets focused on the mission. Because that's just how Oliver is. Sarah shows up to help fight the bad guys, which is great because they now have a bomb they have to take care of, this time in a stadium where a title fight is happening, where the last like 3 or 4 mob bosses in Starling are all there. The team has knocked out pretty much anyone else who's like pretty big time bad guy in the town, except for these last ones. But they're all there for the title fight. And the guy who is now also calling himself Vertigo, which is partially why I don't think he was going to sell the drug, but it's still weird. He wants to blow it up. Oh, I did put it in my notes. There's 3 crime bosses. Look at that. And they use the AC cooling thing to freeze the bomb. Because Felicity's like, cut this green wire, and none of the wires are green. Because, somebody learned that, if you put the color code the lines, people can cut them and destroy your bomb. So they're all like gray, I think. Either gray or red. They're all like the same color. So you can't figure out which one's it. So they just freeze the bomb. And that works. Felicity comes to Oliver and is like, yo, you either want to be with me or we need to end this, because you can't just keep dangling around that you love me, but you can't be with me. I'm not doing that shitty back and forth bullshit. You best be getting a decision made. And she ends up kind of making the decision for Oliver, but mainly because he's like, I can't be with you. So she's like, no, well then we're done. Fully done. Back to platonic. There's nothing going on between us at all anymore. And then we see Sarah and Laurel talking, and they say goodbye because Sarah's gonna, head back out of town soon. She gets up on top of a building. She hears somebody call her name. She turns around and 3 arrows to the chest, falls off the building. Sarah's dead. And she lands right in front of Laurel. Yeah, Sarah's fully dead now. That's how we start the season. Laurel drags Sarah's body back to the arrow cave for help, but Oliver looks at her and checks her pulse and stuff, and she's gone. She's gone. There is no saving Sarah. Laurel's distraught. Everybody in the room is distraught. It's not a good time. Laurel does not want to tell their dad because she's afraid it'll kill him because of his, new heart condition. Oliver tries to focus in on the mission rather than thinking about Sarah, so he heads to where she died to look for clues and finds some small footprints in the gravel that was on the top of the roof. And he thinks he could figure out where they were standing and where Sarah was standing, and he's trying to figure out if there's any cameras anywhere. There does not appear to be, or if there is, they never find the feed because it never comes up that there was any kind of cameras. But more people are dropping via this new archer. Oliver says that the only people that kill this way are people who are in the League of Assassins. So that's messed up. But he just says they would never kill one of their own. Spilling League blood is the biggest no-no. Thea, who had left at the end of season 2, is not answering any of Oliver's calls or texts. And now that Sarah has been murdered, he's trying to get her to come back, or at least, talk in some way. Something to know that she's safe. Felicity is offered a job by Ray to work at Queen Consolidated with him. And she's like, nope, absolutely not. And so Ray just buys the operating business that owns the Best Buys that she works at. So she is working for him, whether she likes it or not. And he's like, you can have this job at Queen Consolidated, or you can keep working at the Best Buy knockoff. You still work for me, but one of them has much better pay and benefits. Which is such a creepy thing to do by the way. Like, it's big, I'm a nice guy and I'm gonna, like, keep following you around because I think you owe me something kind of stuff. It's not like what he's doing, but it gives me those vibes. He's very stalkerish. It's very weird. She's like, F all that, and just quits all the jobs. All the jobs that he has any control over, she quits. Which sucks. They find out the other murders, besides Sarah's, are all connected to some oil deal that's going on. And Oliver is able to find this new archer and capture him, but he's not the one that killed Sarah. He was even in a different city at the time. Fully nowhere near here. The team buries Sarah at her old gravesite that was made when she went off on the boat the first time she died, which Laurel thinks she deserves a fresh grave and stuff, but there's really not much they can do unless they tell people that she died, and Laurel doesn't want to do that. But they have a nice moment of silence and stuff, and Felicity grabs some of the dirt and puts it on there. She says it's a Jewish tradition. She knows Sarah wasn't, but it just felt like right to her, and Oliver does the same thing. Just grabs a little bit of soil and puts it on. Deagle and Lila officially give their baby a name, and she's going to be named Sarah, for Sarah, who died just now. And it's a very sweet moment. Little baby Sarah. Felicity eventually decides to go work for Ray. Like, alright, fine. It's better than, not having any money. I don't think they ever say it for, like, the longest time, but she's vice president. Like, originally I thought she was just high IT or something. No. Vice president of Queen Consolidated. We flash to Thea and Merlin. She's training with him, doing full-on, like, league training, basically, but with him. And she's getting pretty good. Oliver and Felicity end up figuring out where Thea actually is, because she told them that she was in Italy. She's in Corto Maltese, which is very different than Italy. And Deagle mentions to Lila that he's actually happy to be spending some quality time with Sarah now that she's born, and he's even looking forward to changing some diapers. And Lila says she's looking forward to seeing him doing that too. So has Deagle not been changing diapers to his newborn baby? Has he been making his wife, who just went through a major medical and physical thing, no matter which way you gave birth, it completely destroys you? Like has he just been having her do everything herself? I know she's a badass army woman, but that does not change the fact that, she would have had to go through some, healing, whether it be from a C-section scar or a down there healing. Has he not been helping? That's concerning to me. Men or other women in, help partners out once they give birth. Or if they're, a single mother, help them out when they give birth. They are out of commission keep helping them out even after that, but especially right after birth. What the hell? Sorry, that's a thing I'm kind of why are you... This person just went, down for the count. You can change a couple gosh darn diapers, especially in the beginning when it's basically all liquid. Super easy to clean. Kind of. It spreads easier. Ray gives Felicity the old CEO office, so she's now in the same office that Oliver was in when he worked there at Queen Consolidated, and she got an executive assistant. You can tell at this moment that she thought she was going to be the assistant, because she's like, I'm not getting you coffee or nothing like that. He's like, well, that's what your assistant would be for, so I don't know why you would do it. So I don't even think she knew what job she was, agreeing to. Lila says to John, hey, Oliver's headed to Corto Maltese. Maybe instead you can go with him, because I have an agent down there who's been silent, and, if he's goes another week with being silent, we have to call in a bunch of extra forces and stuff, and he's a nice dude. I don't really want to involve all of that if I don't have to. Can you go check on him, make sure he's okay? So he does. He goes down to Corto Maltese with Oliver and Roy. Roy comes with. And the guy tells Deagle that a database of all the Argus agents and their families have been stolen, and there's a sale coming up. And that he's been, like, off radar in order to help find this without getting discovered by the person selling it. John's like, I will totally help. Do you know where the sale is going on? It's like, yeah, hell yeah, let's go right now. Then he parks in, like, the middle of the open and everything, and John's like, this is fucked up, and he's, like, getting his things up, and, yeah, the agent is the one who stole the database, and he's the one that's gonna sell it. The sale's happening tomorrow, though, and he tries to kill Deagle, but he's able to get away. Deagle even calls Felicity for help on this, but she's a little distracted with her new role, but she's eventually able to help. Thea does not want to come home with Oliver. Oliver doesn't find out about Merlin, but, like, he's like, you know, I'm pretty good here. I don't know if I really want to come with. And Oliver decides he's gonna tell Thea everything, since lies are what drove her away. That's been her big thing, is about people lying to her. And it works. He doesn't, like, tell her everything. Like, she doesn't know he's the Arrow yet or anything like that. He starts with a couple secrets, you know, to get her to come with, which she does. She does come with, which is nice. And Merlin allows her to go back because there was a little bit of, like, she had to, like, basically ask him for permission, kind of. And, yeah. But, Nyssa, the heir, the daughter to the demon and heir to the throne, daughter of Ra's al Ghul, she's back in town, and she's looking for Sarah, because Sarah was only supposed to be gone for, like, 2 weeks, and she hasn't come back, and it's like, where the fuck is Sarah? Which isn't great. Nyssa tells Oliver that Malcolm Merlin is alive, and Sarah was actually in Starling to confirm that he was there, because they had heard that Merlin was in a monastery or somewhere in town. They find out that he was probably in a monastery. They go there, and they actually find him. He tries to escape, but Oliver marks him with a little... hits him right here with the arrow, and he's got, like, something on it that will track him. And he asks Merlin, like, what are you here for? And Merlin's like, I'm here for Thea. And he's like, you better stay away from Thea. Merlin does not tell Oliver that he's been training Thea, or that he's even been around. That he makes it sound like Thea doesn't know he exists, and he's been watching from afar, kind of thing. But Merlin also swears on Thea's life that he did not kill Sarah. Nyssa is getting angry with all this, and she captures Thea to lure out Merlin. But Oliver gets there first, and he's able to release Thea, and she runs away rather than showing her new fighting skills. They fight, and it's originally Oliver v. Nyssa, and then Merlin shows up, and it's Oliver v. Merlin v. Nyssa. They're all fighting. But Merlin's able to convince Oliver he did not kill Sarah. He didn't. Nyssa goes home, but she swears she will be back to kill Merlin for the death of... for the death of Sarah, but then also, like... because she was still supposed to find and kill him for the undertaking thing, for breaking the League's code. So there's a lot of reasons why Nyssa would want Merlin dead. Felicity's mom comes for a visit. This is the secret origin of Felicity's smoke. So it's a very Felicity-focused episode. Very fun times. Her mom comes to visit, and if you didn't know or you didn't remember, Felicity's mom works in Vegas. And when I was watching the show with a friend a while ago, and she was like, Felicity's wearing all these like short dresses. How is that like allowed in this corporate setting? Her mom finds a way to wear shorter dresses. Her mom's dresses look like half lingerie. Like, it's got the boning, like visible boning and stuff. It's very strange to see. And like, Felicity looks conservative in comparison. Thea buys an apartment with Merlin's money, letting Oliver know that somebody from Merlin's estate had reached out because she's his last living relative, and she's just using the money for now. And she promises Oliver once the club's back on its feet, she will stop using the money and like use it, like, donate it to somewhere or something like that. Like, just she'll get rid of it. There's a citywide blackout, and following that, a message from Brother Eye comes up over all the airways, radio, TV, everywhere. They take credit for it, and they promise more to come. And they say they're going to empty the banks next. So a bunch of people rush Starling General, or whatever the bank, like they're rushing the banks, and to like empty the vaults and get their money beforehand. Well, it's like after hours, so they're fully intending to break into the bank, break into the vault, and just take handfuls of money. Laurel is the acting district attorney. She's normally an assistant district attorney, but the district attorney's out of town, so she's acting. And she sends out a riot squad to keep people out of the banks, which just escalates it into a riot. It wasn't a riot until she sent the riot squad. Now it's a riot. And the team is like trying to calm people down while Felicity tries to figure out a way to get back into the Brother Eyes, like figure out where they're coming from. They have to use like a tear gas arrow and stuff to like fully send the crowd out, and so it very reminiscent of some of the Black Lives Matters stuff that's been happening in the real world. There's a lot of weirdly real world parallels that happen in this season. I might also be putting a little too much stock in some of them because of how recent all this stuff is, but we find out that the virus that they are using to infiltrate everything is one that Felicity made 5 years ago when her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's roommate used to do hacktivism, civil disobedience via online sit-ins and hacking into things. And we find out that like her boyfriend hacked into like a federal site and used her thing to get in, and he was starting to try to like cancel people's loans, like just zero it out, which she stopped him from before he could do too many. He only got a couple done, but that was enough to get him arrested and going for prison. Oliver's like, is there any chance your ex-boyfriend, is doing this? And she claims no, he didn't. They go to this roommate. He works some random corporate job, like Brother Eye also hates him kind of stuff. But she's like, no, he definitely couldn't have done this because he committed suicide before sentencing. Felicity also finds out her mother was actually sent these round-trip tickets to Starling in a surprise email campaign for a thing she definitely didn't even put in for it. Felicity realizes somebody wanted her mom in town, and at that moment, a bunch of people burst into Felicity's house and kidnapped them both. Turns out her boyfriend was actually recruited for the NSA, and they made up the suicide story so that nobody would look for him, so he could be completely anonymous or whatever. And he recently got out of the NSA, and he's the one leading the Brother Eye group. Which explains, how he got her code. He's been alive. That's how the Brother Eyes got the code. And the boyfriend wants Felicity to help them with the next step because he knows that she's the one that's going to be able to do that. Which, if, he was hired on by the NSA, but he also knows that she's... How has Felicity not ever been approached by some government facility for some of her usefulness there? I don't know. They need her to reroute some bank trucks because whenever stuff like this happens, the Federal Reserve will send extra money to the banks in order to be able for them to be able to actually give money back to the community, because whenever there's a threat to the financial system, people usually run for the banks. That's a normal response. Happened in the Depression. It happened partially in the recession. It's a thing that happens. We are nervous about the little numbers that don't really mean anything, but they technically, one of number means I own one whole dollar. Once people get freaked out about the numbers, they go and they want to get that paper money, So she hacks in to reroute the trucks to, instead of going to the banks, to go to their little hideout, which she is able to do, but luckily Ray Palmer gave her mom a new smartwatch that supposedly replaces your computer because it even has Wi-Fi, its own Wi-Fi signal. And she's able to use that to call for help because the computer she was using, as soon as she was done with the thing, they immediately cut off the Wi-Fi so she couldn't get help. But they also still left her at the computers. She's beyond smart. Why would you leave her with the computer? They easily could have picked her back up and taken her back to the other chair that they had her in before. It was in the middle of the room, not near anything. I don't know why I'm mad that Felicity got away. I'm mad when villains are dumb. I'm just mad when villains are dumb. There was no reason to keep her in that chair anymore. They easily could have moved her back. But whatever, she's able to call for help. And Oliver shows up to take him down. They're able to get everybody home safe. Thea offers that Oliver move in with her to the apartment, which he does end up agreeing on. Roy has not been sleeping well. And we see at the end of this episode that he's been having nightmares of him killing Sarah. Of him, throwing arrows into Sarah's chest. Which is concerning. Not great. When the guy who was doped up on Mirakuru and once went on a crazy rampage, not being able to remember anything, suddenly starts dream remembering killing somebody. Roy is really off of his game. He is spacey and tired during missions. He's got a slow reaction time. He almost gets himself hurt on some of these missions. He asks Felicity if she can test his blood for Mirakuru, which she's like, this is crazy. It's for sure out of your system. You were given a vaccine 6 months ago. There's no way it's still in there, but she tested anyway. There is no Mirakuru. So he's like, well, then what the heck are these dreams in my head? Laurel is angry now that Sarah's been murdered. Fully wants to punch everything and stuff, and she's been acting crazy. She ends up going and working with a local boxer to just train her in boxing, some way to, get the steam off, get some of that physical energy out. But her new trainer is being framed for some murders, 'cause of course he is. Apparently he used to be a vigilante, and this killer seems to be connected to him in some way. He used to be known as Wildcat. It's fun. Felicity finds out from this digital autopsy she made where she scanned Sarah's body that the arrows in the trajectory would have to be from a shorter than average person. Roy is shorter than average. So it matches about Roy's height, and if he was just throwing the arrows, about that much force. So they're a little, Roy tells Oliver and Laurel that, like, I killed Sarah. We have evidence from the trajectory and stuff. Laurel's very much not happy. And Oliver helps Roy use a meditation technique that he learned a long time ago in order to help Roy actually remember what happened. Not just this dream version, like get an actual memory. We find out Roy's not remembering him killing Sarah, but him killing a police officer when he was on his Mirakuru thing a few months ago. Which he does not take that well at all. That's still an innocent, and it's confirmed killed by him with his own dang hand. He, like, put an arrow directly into the dude's chest. It's really messed up. And he's very upset about that. But he has got, like, at least he didn't kill Sarah. They figure out the killer that's framing the boxing guy, the Wildcat, was his old apprentice. Was the Roy equivalent to Wildcat's arrow. That killed a man, and then Wildcat just let him go, and he was angry about that. They're able to get that guy arrested, and Laurel asks her boxing trainer, can you train me in vigilantism? Which he's like, you're not ready for this, but we're gonna keep boxing, and we'll see what happens. Which she takes for now. He's like, that's fine, I guess, for now. She very much wants to get back into get into the field as the Canary. We see a woman named Cupid kill the dude who was doing the framing, and dress him up like the Arrow, and kill them with his arrows that have little heart tips, which, like, the police originally think they're spades, but they're hearts. Oh, we do start with a little flashback back to the night Slade's men were out causing a rampage. Apparently Oliver saved this woman. She was, like, in somebody's hand and being choked out to death. He saved her, and she has become completely obsessed with him. Ray has added a salmon ladder to the office. It's as if he's purposely messing with Felicity. It doesn't even stay all that long. I think it's gone by the end of this episode. It was just something he wanted to try out. But, like, she was like, why? I can get no work done. No work done anywhere I go. Nowhere I go is safe from this damn salmon ladder. Ray also holds a little press conference to announce that he's renaming Queen Consolidated to Palmer Technologies. He's really into renaming things to get away from their past mess-ups. In Oliver's frustration with the name change, he needed to get the arrowheads crushed down to look for what they're made of, and he just starts smashing it. And he finds a note inside, which I don't know why she thought he was going to smash it up. But he did, and there's a note inside that leads to an apartment that is filled wall to wall with an arrow shrine. There are news articles and little hearts everywhere. The whole thing is in, like, slightly red tint, like the lamps in there have red bulbs in them. Because, of course, and there's a little phone that Cupid calls him in on and is like, hello, lover boy. I need you to work with me because we're destined to be in love, and you're the best and all that shit. Crazy people rambling, you know? Have you considered that? Consider that she's crazy? Roy finally gets a nickname. He's only been working with Oliver for, like, half a season. He finally gets a name. He's called Arsenal now, which is nice. We do find out that Cupid is an ex-cop. She was the first woman on a SWAT team. But she was put for a psych eval after she became obsessed with her partner in the same way that she's obsessed with the Arrow right now. So Oliver tries to track down that psychiatrist to figure out what the fuck is wrong with this girl. At the same time, Cupid hires this guy, one of her old CIs that went dirty, if he can figure out where the Arrow's hideout is, and he uses the same method that is used in The Flash, where basically they take all the crime scenes and they figure out how long it takes them to get there, and they're able to triangulate where their hideout probably is. And maybe some heroes should consider evasive maneuvers when they're coming back to their hideout, and maybe keeping an extra suit on them so they're not always coming from the same location, because this got Barry and Oliver. For Barry, it was on his way back from stuff. For Oliver, it was on his way there, because you have to go to the place, take the suit off his fucking mannequin, put it on, which I didn't throw a fuss about the Flash's suit being on a mannequin because he's the Flash. We literally see him take it off the mannequin and put it on himself in like 3 seconds on the show. I don't give a shit about him. But Oliver does not have that luxury. So how the hell is he getting anywhere on time if he has to tear apart the mannequin, put it through? It bugs me. It bugs me. Cupid shows up at Verdant, the club that's on top of the Arrow Cave. It's on its opening night because it had to reopen. Oliver's like, meet me literally anywhere else. And she goes, well, what about this random subway station in the middle of town? And they find out when he gets there, he's like, oh, this is the subway stop that I saved her at. I remember that night being around here and shooting a dude and saving a woman. He didn't even recognize, like, her as the woman, but he figures it out when he gets there. And there's a point where they're fighting and they end up on the tracks down below. And she handcuffs him to the tracks and says, like, if I can't have you, nobody can, and we'll die together. We see a train. But if you remember from Arrow Season 2, these are old subway stations. Nobody uses these anymore. Whose train is down there? Like, is there still subway stations in, like, the nice part of town, and the Glades just has the old rail still going underneath it? Because I thought they said that there wasn't a subway in Starling. But there's a train on there right now. Did they open the subway back up? That's a weird thing to do after the terrorist attacks that have happened using these things. But I guess maybe they thought if they used it, they would be able to freaking find an earthquake machine faster. Why is there a train down there? Oliver has to, like, break his thumb to get out of the handcuffs, and he's able to get them both out of the way in time before the train goes by. But really, these lines aren't supposed to be in use anymore. Why were they even in danger? He hands her off to Waller, and Waller pops her on the Suicide Squad. I don't know why he didn't just turn her in, but I don't know. But she's on the Suicide Squad now. It's fine. Oliver decides, after this crazy woman, maybe he wants to tell Felicity he was full of feelings and try to give it another go. But he walks in on her and Ray, moving past that platonic stage. They were kissing. It was their first kiss ever. It was really awkward. Afterwards, we see Ray in his office, looking at the plans for the Atom suit. ATOM. Atom. And he's becoming an Iron Man equivalent. He's going to put on a bunch of tech. This next episode is the crossover episode, which will have its own Showverse about it. So Season 1, Episode 8 of The Flash, and Season 3, Episode 8 of Arrow are crossover events. So both of those episodes will be talked about as one over Not my next Showverse. That's going to be talking about Constantine, which was airing at the same time as this. We'll talk about... Unless I can't get access to Constantine. I actually might change that. I might do the crossover episode, then Constantine, because I'm having some trouble finding a way to watch the show. The Constantine was canceled after one season. It wasn't even a long season because nobody wanted to watch it. And yet everywhere on the internet, the cheapest I can find it for is $23. This is a show nobody wanted to watch, but now you're hiding it behind a paywall. How am I supposed to watch it and give it more traction? Especially because I think I saw something that they were considering bringing Constantine back. But how are you supposed to do that? It's trapped behind a paywall. I don't care about this. Well, I mean, I do care about this season because, like, also Constantine's kind of cool, and I really wanted to watch this show, but it's trapped behind a paywall, and I don't want to pay almost $30 to watch a show from 2015. It's such an old show now. Whatever. Constantine and the crossover episode are the next two ones. I don't know in what order, but they're coming. Don't worry about it. I'll find a way to watch this damn show. So again, there's going to be there's a tiny bit of referencing to the crossover episode, but honestly not even that much. That it kind of stayed, not contained per se, but like, we don't reference it too much for now on. So we reference the crossover episode a lot more in Flash than we do in this Arrow season. So on to the next part. So the League of Assassins contacts Oliver. They are done waiting for him to find Sarah's murderer. They plan on killing 50 people a day until Oliver can bring them her murderer. They're going to start in 48 hours. He has 48 hours left before they start murdering 50 random people every day. Because apparently that's what they used to do. If someone from the League got killed, until the murderer came forward, they would just kill 50 random people in whatever city it was. That's so many. Thea finds out about Sarah being killed when she's at the cemetery leaving flowers for her mom, and Laurel's there, and she's like, why are you talking to Sarah's grave when Sarah's alive? And she finds out, and she's told not to tell anybody. During the crossover episodes, Felicity had brought some DNA that was on the arrows to Star Labs. It was partially like corrupted and stuff, and they needed Star Labs to isolate the DNA structure so that they can run it and try to figure out who the murderer was. It's Oliver's DNA. Well, 12 out of the 13 points that they're using are his, and that's kind of impossible for it to be anybody other than Oliver with that many matching points. Oliver obviously assumes Merlin is setting him up so that he can be attacked by the League, which makes a lot of sense. Laurel's mom comes for a visit, and she can immediately tell that something is off with Laurel, which makes sense because as a way to show the audience what's going on, Laurel doesn't always hide it very well. Her mom, basically picks it up. I understand for the audience why it's happening, but, if you assume the audience isn't there, Laurel's just really, really, really bad at pretending her sister's still alive. She has this, face every time, and somehow Lance never sees it or puts anything together. She senses something's off, and she mentions that when Sarah was on the boat, lost at the boat and stuff, she could always feel like Sarah was still alive. She always felt it inside. She was one of the few people who still thought she was alive. She tells Laurel she doesn't feel that anymore. Her mom can just tell that Sarah is fully dead. The Arrow team is able to find out that a plane went from Corto Maltese to Starling, and Merlin could have been on it. And they go down to the airfield that it was at, and they get some security footage. And they see that Merlin and Thea are getting off the plane, which is extra what the fuck, because they thought Merlin hadn't contacted Thea and that they had not been in communication. So what the fuck's going on, fam? Ray opens up about how he was engaged and she died. His fiance died the night that Slade's men attacked the city. And that is why he's building the Atom suit as a way to help the city and kind of like honor her memory, avenge her death kind of thing. Like, he doesn't think he's gonna like go find the person that killed her or anything. He just wants to make the city like safer for people like her. So a very similar thing. He's on a similar crusade as Oliver. The team convinces Oliver he needs to talk to Thea again. But this time not as Oliver. He goes as the Arrow. Crashes through a window, and Thea fights back and threatens him before jumping off a balcony. And Oliver's like, well, shit, I'm not the only one keeping secrets now, am I? Thea immediately tells Merlin that somebody showed up at her apartment looking for him and stuff. And so he gives Oliver a visit. And Merlin has a video on his little phone of Thea killing Sarah. And that if Oliver doesn't do something to get the League off their ass, he's going to show it to him. And then that's going to be the end of Thea, basically. And Merlin's hoping Oliver will fight Ra's al Ghul in a battle which should erase all blood debts against Thea and against Merlin that Ra's currently has going. We find out Thea was under a drug called Vectura, I think, which makes people very susceptible to suggestion. So she didn't even know what she was doing or that she even did it. She has no memory of this. Ray shows Felicity his Atom suit, or like the projection of it that he has, a little hologram, and asks her to help him keep the city safe. She says, why does this keep happening to me? Which, like, yeah, apparently you're just the go-to gal for white men who feel the need to help the city by punching people in the face. Oliver goes to fight Ra's al Ghul, which he has to do climb a mountain first. Then he like takes off his shirt, and Ra's also there shirtless. Oliver picks out a weapon. Ra's has nothing, and they fight. And Ra's takes the blade and shoves it through Oliver's chest. Gets him in the abdomen. He kicks Oliver off the mountain itself. Oliver's dead. Sarah's dead. Oliver's dead. So much death happening here. Back in Starling City, Deagle is wearing the Arrow suit so that people don't know that the Arrow is gone, at least. He mentions how it's too small. They literally just put Oliver's suit on him. Mainly Arsenal's doing the actual stuff because Deagle can't move very well in the suit because it's so small. Felicity is in full denial that Oliver, he's been gone for 4 days. He might be dead. But no. No. He's fine. There's no reason to worry. He's fine. It's fine. She's also trying to talk Ray out of being the Atom because he's going to get himself hurt. He has no real idea how to fight. He's a tech boy. He's a science man. Thea is also getting worried about Oliver's absence and says such to Merlin. Like, he's been gone for a while and he didn't really give her like a reason he left. He just disappeared. So Merlin checks in with the team. He goes to the mountain and he finds the sword still sitting in the rock because apparently Ra's likes to leave the weapon when he kills a man. So he brings it back to the team to prove that it's Oliver's blood and Oliver died. And the team assumes, and Merlin assumed they would assume that he was trying to trick them in some way, but he's like, you can test the blood, it's Oliver's. He died. He had to have died. They don't know that someone has found Oliver's body because when it fell off the mountain, it landed on this little outcropping ledge thing. Someone found the body and dragged it somewhere. Thea asks Roy for the Arrow's help finding Oliver. She's like, you know the Arrow. You have some way of contacting him, right? Can you help me find Oliver with him? Felicity quits the team. Says she just can't do it without Oliver. She also tells Ray she can't stop him, but she won't help him either. Gives him back like this microchip he was having her work on because he couldn't get it to work right. And she's quitting all the crime fighting. Like, can't stop everyone from doing it, but at least she can do is not be part of it herself. The man who found Oliver's body is actually a person who's in the flashbacks, which, again, I don't talk about the flashbacks, mainly because I already talk about so much and it's so long. I don't have time to talk about these. Would be twice as long if I talked about the flashbacks too. But I have to mention them a little bit because the man who saved Oliver's body is the man who he spent a lot of time with when Oliver was in Hong Kong. Because Oliver didn't spend his whole time on the island. He actually was in Hong Kong working for Waller as a hitman kind of thing. And he was staying with this man and his wife and his son. But that man is the one who found him. And he takes Oliver's body to his wife, or I guess ex-wife. Like, I don't think they ever got divorced, but they're definitely separated. Who is in a cabin. We find out later that the man specifically contacted her to come to this cabin to help bring Oliver back to life. Because he's still alive, kind of. Because he's been basically frozen because the mountain is very wintry. It's the top of a mountain. So the cold has helped kind of preserve him for a little bit longer. And she's able to use some healing techniques in tandem with his fighting spirit to bring him back to life, basically. And Laurel looks like she's going to try to take up the Black Canary mantle in Oliver's place. Like, since she's not there, so Laurel puts on Sarah's old suit and uses her old sonic device to go after some men. Like, she's fully trying to take over. She's not ready to. Definitely gets beat up a lot and is still... You see her progress throughout the season, but yeah, she still gets, like, more knocked around than actually winning the battles, which is very weird to see. And they do a really good job in the fight choreography to show everybody's, like, growth, but it is still kind of hard to watch her initial ones where she just gets hit and you can see how much it affects her. She's not used to it yet and stuff. But yeah, Tatsu's able to bring Oliver back to life. He's alive again. Laurel starts doing what Sarah used to do when she first came to Starling, so before she'd even contacted Oliver in anything, which was protecting women from physical and sexual attacks, mainly in the Glades. Which is great. But again, still super untrained and stuff, and she definitely gets smacked around a few times, and like more than once Arsenal or Roy kind of shows up to like finish the job and actually save her. Kind of, she's doing her best, and I'm pretty sure she has Sarah's old staff with her. She's just not fully trained yet. She's not ready. Merlin is trying to get Thea to leave Starling before Roz can take his revenge, but she's not leaving. She refuses to leave without being able to at least tell Oliver that she's leaving. Like, until he's back, it's just not gonna happen. There's a man named Brickwell. Again, in the way that I don't talk about the flashbacks, I actually kind of avoid talking about, like, villain of the weeks or short jobs that they do. I'm trying to talk about overall story because it's already long enough. These shows are very long. I love them, but they're very long. But this guy ends up doing a lot of things. So there's a man named Brickwell, and he is able to get a bunch of people out of jail by stealing the physical evidence that the police had on them. And they have to be released because there's no evidence. The trials aren't going to be able to go through. And he tells everyone he released, you work for me now, and we're taking over the Glades. I don't know why everyone wants the Glades. Is it the biggest part of town? I know it's the poorest part of town, but is it bigger or something? Like, why is everyone so obsessed with the Glades? I guess they figure the police are more likely to abandon the Glades than anywhere else in town, but that place goes through rough shit, man. I would not want to be anywhere near the Glades. Brickwell kidnaps the mayor and several aldermen, but, well, he tries to. He doesn't actually end up getting the mayor because the mayor's in a meeting with, the aldermen, Lance, Laurel, Ray, and Felicity. They're all in a meeting together. And Laurel is able to stop the guy that was specifically trying to go for the mayor because the mayor got into another room before they could be fully kidnapped. And Ray also jumps in front of somebody and is able to take him out before Felicity can get hurt because Brickwell gave the order of kidnap the mayor and the alderman and kill anyone else in the room. Luckily, everyone else survives. They're all protagonists. Laurel and Ray go to take on some of Brick's men, and Brick ends up killing one of the aldermen. And he demands that all the police are removed from the Glades. That it's his territory now, or he's going to kill more aldermen. They use a voice changer so that Laurel can speak to her dad as Sarah, because, Lance has been getting reports of a woman in black and blonde hair running around fighting people, so he keeps asking everyone, can I talk to Sarah? Is Sarah in town? What's she doing? And why isn't she answering my phone calls? So she calls her as Sarah, calls him as Sarah, and are able to get a little bit of information from him, and they use Ray's helicopter in order to get to the Glades quickly, which is... The Glades must be huge, or something, because when they were using the voice changer, they were in the Arrow Cave, which is in the Glades, and then Felicity goes all the way to Palmer Technologies, which is not in the Glades, asks for the helicopter, which is on the roof, and they all go to the roof of there, then to go back into the Glades. And it's partially, the way to get there, and then also is, distraction and stuff for some of the outside guys, but, you probably could have got there sooner if you didn't head out of the Glades, just go back in the Glades. Well, the Glades, they're so important. They're able to get the alderman out, but Brick just switches his threat to the families of literally every city official. He finds all of their home addresses and stuff, and so the mayor makes the decision to pull the police from the Glades. During all this stuff, Thea's, been opening the club, and she held auditions for a new DJ. And at this point, Merlin agrees that they'll stay in Starling at least until Oliver gets back, kind of stuff. And the DJ's like, hey, I thought you were heading out of town. And Thea's like, no, I'm actually going to be around for a while. The DJ calls the League and speaks to them in Arabic, because apparently he works for them, that Thea and Merlin aren't leaving Starling. So now the League knows where to find them. Now that the police have been pulled from the Glades, the Arrow team, what's left of them, has taken up the police's job. Felicity sits and listens to the police scanner, and they have their various ways of figuring out where the crime is. They go, they try to stop it, they come back, all that stuff. They're very, very busy. Very busy. Lance, I should mention, did not want the police pulled at all. He's furious about it. He refused to even make the call, the mayor had to make it themselves. it was just, and he's like, if there's any way I can help, please let me know, to Felicity, because he's furious about this. He does not want this to happen. They discover that Brick is the man who killed Merlin's wife. Malcolm Merlin had, he's been using the same gun even. Merlin had been using like the cameras on their computers to watch them, and happened to be watching at the moment when they said that. He's now on like the warpath. Oliver leaves the cabin to start walking back to civilization, and Tatsu follows him because if he didn't have her there, he would probably die. Especially because I don't think he took the ingredients for his penicillin tea that she's been feeding him in order to fight off the infections of these. Whatever. She comes with him. Merlin goes to the team and offers his help, and they're like, fuck no. Get out of here. They do need help, though, so they call on the citizens of the Glades. They're like, you know what? If we can't count on the police, the people themselves are going to help take this place back. And there was a full brawl in the streets of Starling. You know, Brick and his men show up, the masks show up, and then all the people come up behind him. Everyone's got bats and shit. There's definitely casualties on both sides, too. It's, like, really fucked up. And Sin, the girl from the first 2 seasons that, like, knows Sarah and knows Roy, she's there, and she actually sees Laurel, and she's like, Sarah! And you can see on her face, like, she knows that this is not Sarah. And she actually tells that to Lance. She's like, yo, whoever that person is, that's not Sarah. Because Lance is there, you know, to bring the police back into the Glades. And she's like, nah, that's not your daughter. I don't know who that woman is. Oliver does make it back to Starling, like, right at the end of the fight, and he makes an announcement. Like, he's on a police car, like, the big ones, with Brick being captured and stuff there. And he's like, I'm sorry, I was gone for a while, but I am back, and you've proved tonight that the city is the people. He makes a whole loud, I'm back, and he shoots off an arrow and flies off. You know. And Oliver asks Merlin to help him train Oliver to fight Ra's al Ghul, because he wants to go back and fight him again, because he knows as soon as Ra's figures out he's alive, he's coming back to kill him again, which he just publicly announced that he's back in Starling. So good job, Oliver. You didn't give yourself any time to do literally anything. Good job. But now that Oliver's back, he's like, Laurel, you cannot be out in the field. And they immediately start butting heads, because Laurel's, while still training and not being the best, she's still been out in the field with Arsenal and with Diggle and stuff. And she's like, no, I've been holding my own these weeks that you've been gone. You were gone for almost a month, and we all had to move on. And she ends up just like going out in the field without their help, which doesn't end very well. Merlin wants to tell Thea that Oliver's the Arrow so that they can all work together, but Oliver's afraid he's gonna lose her forever, because that means he's been lying to her face for years now, and he's really worried, but he ends up deciding, you know, it's going to be better if she does find out at this point. So he brings her down to the Arrow Cave and tells her he's the Arrow. She takes it, like, extremely well, considering how much she hates lies and stuff. She's thanking him for what he's done for the city. He's like, you were saving people. I can't be mad at you. You were saving people. She is mad that Merlin knew that Oliver was the Arrow, and specifically said to Thea when she came to him to leave originally that he can't trust anyone and everyone's just lying to her, when he knew why Oliver was lying and that Oliver could be trusted. She's pissed at him. Any bit of trust she had built for Merlin is gone now. Lance is starting to question Laurel about who's wearing Sarah's suit. And yeah, the whole team is pushing back on Oliver about Oliver's trying to make everything go back to the way they were before he left. But they all had to move on and assumed he had died. Like, they had to figure out if this cause was still worthy to them without Oliver there. Because, with him there, they're helping Oliver do this. But without him, was this a crusade they all wanted to take on? Or was this something that they were just doing to help Oliver? And they had changed up some of the ways that they did things. Simple as that. It does take a little bit of butting heads, but eventually Oliver has to realize that what he has made is going to live on without him. And he needs to accept that some of these things are going to be a little bit different now. It takes him a while to accept this, but I don't know anybody who's ever accepted that kind of thing very quickly, but he does do it eventually. Thea needing just something simple to do. Something to keep her mind off stuff. She ends up sleeping with that DJ that I mentioned before. But he tries to give her wine laced with cyanide, but luckily Merlin had taught her how to recognize cyanide even in something as aroma-filled as red wine. And they fight, and Roy and Merlin both burst in to help fight him, but this guy commits suicide with a pill, I assume some kind of cyanide pill, rather than be captured or killed by the enemy. Laurel, finally, it is episode 13. Sarah died in episode 1. She finally tells her dad that Sarah died. And while he is devastated, he does live past this knowledge, and I understand why she didn't tell him. I completely understand, but also he is a grown man who can take it. He is still, shattered a bit, because not only is his daughter dead, but his other daughter lied about it for months. Oliver and Thea head to Lianyu so they can work on their fears so that Roz can't use those against them, and to just train some more, just get some fighting, kind of see where each other are at fighting-wise. After a restless night on the island, Oliver heads into that little prison that he's got down there to see Slade. And Slade's not there, and the guard is dead. And Merlin gives them a call and lets Oliver know that Merlin doesn't think Oliver has this killer instinct and thinks this is a way that he could get it back. So he somehow got Slade out. He was the one who helped organize Slade getting out of the prison. He's just loose on this island now with Oliver and Thea. Slade knocks out Oliver and locks both Oliver and Thea in his old cell. He's planning on leaving them like they did to him. Which, he does, but they use Thea's tiny frame. Because this prison was made for grown men, so the bars have a little bit of space in between them. Enough for Thea to stick her arm through, not her whole body. And she can't quite reach the button, so they have to pull her arm out of the socket. And she was able to reach, and it's kind of gross, but it does, show just how much Thea's grown and stuff. I don't know. It's gross. Oliver tells Thea that Merlin used her to kill Sarah. She doesn't take that very well. She doesn't like knowing that she's a killer. And after Thea and Oliver capture Slade, they put him back in a cell, and they decide they're gonna head home. They need to get off Lianyu. Nothing good happens on this island. Just need to go. Lance is beyond angry at Laurel, still saying that she broke his trust. At the end of the day, those two were supposed to be able to trust each other, and she lied to him about his daughter's death for months. That is serious shit. Jesus Christ, Laurel. Sarah cannot handle knowing that she killed Sarah, especially being around Laurel. She can almost handle it when it's she's around literally anyone else, but being in the same room as Laurel, she can't. So she actually opens up to Roy about it, and we find out that Roy has been helping the family that of the cop that he killed, and he thinks about them all the time. He takes them groceries. He's left Christmas presents for the child. Literally, he's just been kind of taking care of them from afar. He leaves money for him and everything. Thea decides she's got to tell Laurel. And she tells Laurel that she was drugged and she was the one who actually put the arrows in Sarah. Laurel, luckily, is not so enraged or like blinded from her grief and stuff. And maybe it's partially because, she's known Sarah was dead for a while. But she does not blame Thea. She's like, you need to get away from Merlin. Like, you need to stop working with him because he's terrible. He's a bad person. He made you kill. Like, that's... But she's not angry at Thea. She's angry at Merlin, and she wants to take him out herself. But she can't because Thea contacted the League and turned Merlin in so that Oliver and her could be safe. Oliver wants to rescue Merlin to save Thea's soul. He knows that once this anger subsides, she is not going to be able to handle the fact that she served her dad up on a platter to be killed, which is true. Like, later on, she's like, how the fuck could I have done this to my own father? So it's a good idea to save him, but like, Merlin's such a pain in everybody's butt this season, especially. Felicity shows up in Ray's little office lab thing and is like, you haven't been seen in a week. I can tell you have not slept or showered in a week. So she hacks into his computer and changes his password and is like, you can either manually try to figure this out, which I calculate is going to take about 6 hours, 6.5. Or you can eat a full meal, shower, and go to sleep for those 6 hours, and I'll give you the password. He's like, oh, that sounds better than doing the other thing. So they start to do that, and after he showers, he's like walking around all topless and shit, and they end up sleeping together. And after he like actually sleeps and stuff, he wakes up and he's able to figure out the final thing that's been keeping the suit from working, and he's like flying around the city now. Thea tells Nyssa that she's the one who put the arrows in Sarah's chest. They had captured Nyssa, and she'd been like in this weird cage, and she lets her out of the cage, and honestly, I think Nyssa fights a little bit, but I think even Nyssa knows that, like, it's Merlin's fault, not Thea's. And so in the end of the day, they're not after Thea. They're after Merlin more than that. But Roz wants Oliver to take over the League. Forget Nyssa being the heir to the demon head or whatever. He's like, no. You need to be it. We find out later there's a prophecy that though the man who does not die by Ra's al Ghul's blade shall become the next Ra's al Ghul. And Roz shows Oliver the Lazarus pit. And says he uses it, to live for, he's over 100 at this point. And offers, the title of Ra's al Ghul to Oliver. Like, you can have all this. You can run the League. You'll have the Lazarus pit to stay relatively young for a really long time. There's so much here. Roz lets Oliver, Deagle, and Merlin go as a show of good faith to Oliver. And Merlin and Deagle are like, what the fuck is the catch? But Oliver won't even, tell him. And Oliver runs right back into routine as soon as he gets back. He starts dropping off criminals to Lance, who's done with the arrow. He's like, no. You know about Sarah's death, and you didn't say shit to me. I'm done with this. This is bullshit. I used to have a code. Vigilantism was people who thought they were above the law and they were also criminals, and I should have stuck with that code, you fucking asshole. So, Lance is back to being anti-Arrow. When Nyssa gets home and asks, why the fuck is Merlin still alive? Because as soon as Oliver got back, he let Nyssa go, and she found out that he was alive. She's furious when she learns that Roz wants Oliver, an outsider, to be the next Roz, rather than her, who's literally grown up in the League and has been the heir to the demon for so long. Like, in a flashback, Merlin is shown, like, when he shows up at the League, like, 21 years ago, and she, a tiny child, is like, I am Nyssa, the heir to the demon. Like, she's been there forever. Oliver's actually considering Roz's offer. Because, the city's kind of turning against him with Lance, not being on his side anymore. And maybe being Roz isn't the worst thing. I don't know. Considering. People are mad that he's even considering, but he is still considering. Lance says he cannot forgive Laurel about lying about Sarah. Like, he just can't. Like, he's tried. He can't do it. It's fucked up. Nyssa comes back to Starling to spend some time with Laurel because she misses Sarah, and with all this shit back home, she just wants someone close to Sarah that she can, be friendly with and stuff and get along with. And Nyssa agrees to help train Laurel because her previous trainer was, like, still kind of trying to box with her and stuff, but as soon as he saw this stuff on the news about this woman in black, and he's like, you're out there and you're not ready, and he eventually refuses to train her anymore, so Nyssa takes up training Laurel. Laurel gets so many different people to work with, and it's definitely at this point where you start to see Laurel's fighting abilities get closer to everyone else, and she stops being, like, knocked around as much and more actually does the fighting. Still takes a little bit of time, but I do like how you can look at a fight scene at the beginning, like on episode like 6 or 7, and then a fight scene around like 17 or 18, and you can tell a difference in Laurel's fighting, which is very good. I like that kind of storytelling, that even they are telling us, but they're also showing us that she's improving. Oliver does officially decline Roz's offer because he's still under the delusion that it's something he could choose to decline. And Thea goes to stay with Roy because she can't handle... Merlin was really, really fucked up by Roz, tortured by him, and he's been recovering at their apartment, and Thea's like, I can't be around this man anymore, and goes to stay with Roy for a few days. And Roz starts showing up in Starling, killing criminals dressed in the Arrow suits. The headlines are like, Arrow back to his murderous ways and stuff. Which really helps when, Lance was already pissed off at the Arrow. Hey, it's Deagle and Lila's wedding. You remember those two? Remember? They get married. Ray ends up being their officiant because their minister, gets called back into battle for another tour, in the military right before their thing, and Oliver's late for photos. Everything's going well, but not quite. So when Deagle and Lila try to go on their honeymoon, because Oliver's like, don't even worry about this fake Arrow. We will deal with it. You need to choose your family first this time. Like, go to have your honeymoon. Like, what are you talking about? We will handle this. You have your honeymoon. Floyd Lawton shows up. The guy who killed Deagle's brother. And on the Suicide Squad. And is like, hey, Waller needs your help with a mission for the Suicide Squad. So they do that. They go ahead to do that. Oliver shows up trying to find this fake arrow, and he finds like a handful of them. They're all League men, and that guy from his past is like leading the charge. He is just they're here to destroy his reputation. Now Ray Palmer has his Atom suit, and he has declared that he will help the city find the arrow and get him arrested. This man's a criminal. He shows up at the place, and he happens to show up right when the League men have left. So he sees Oliver standing over a bunch of dead bodies, and he scans his face, and he makes a 3D model, and he sees that he runs that through facial recognition, and he discovers that Oliver Queen is the arrow. Ray confronts Felicity about it, and she's like, no, like, it's fine. And he still goes to the police, because Ray thinks that Felicity's judgment is clouded. He goes to the police, but he ends up in the interrogation room with Laurel. So you can imagine how well his testimony goes and stuff. Like, it's just not... She uses every legal way to basically, like, toss it out. She's like, these photos could be fabricated. This is an uncorroborated testimony. Like, no corroborated... Nobody can confirm that what you're saying is true. You also can't use the media, because if you say on TV that Oliver Queen is the arrow, Oliver Queen has a perfect slander lawsuit that he can just... boom. You know... He may even get his company back. That's how much of a slam dunk case he would basically have. The Suicide Squad mission that they went on. Apparently, there was a senator that was held hostage, and they are sent to go save him. As soon as they show up, the senator's like, you weren't supposed to be here. And he pulls out a gun on them. Turns out, he... had hired a bunch of guns to do a fake kidnapping so that he could be more sympathetic and his poll numbers could go up when he decides to run for president soon. But now they fucked him up. They fucked it up, and he pulled the gun out, so now he has to, like, kill all the hostages. Like, everyone could have gone home if you guys had just stayed away. During this, Floyd Lawton saves Cupid, who, remember, is on the Suicide Squad again. And so she switches her obsession to him, because anybody who saves her life is immediately the person that she's going to marry and have so many beautiful, badass babies with, and just... she's obsessed. Ray fakes a 911 call in order to get Oliver to show up to a slightly abandoned, like, power plant. Like, it's not abandoned, but there's not anybody there. And they duke it out. Oliver sees a weakness in Ray's suit and shoots an arrow at his, like, power pack on the side, basically shutting it down. So now Ray's just wearing a bunch of heavy technology. And he tells Ray, like, hey, Felicity chose to help you, so if she tells you something, you need to trust her. Especially because right now he knows that Felicity told Ray to trust Oliver. So he's basically like, you should trust Felicity in trusting me. Ray does eventually... He does have a change of heart. For some reason that does, pull him out of it. Both Deagle and Lila, after they make it out of the hostage situation and they're able to get home safe, they're both like, I need to quit my job, because Lila says at one point during the thing that, like, she knows parents that don't even fly together just in case the plane goes down, their child doesn't become an orphan, and they just both went on a mission with a team called the Suicide Squad. And they're both like, I gotta quit. And Lila's like, Deagle, what you're doing with the arrow is so beyond good. You don't quit. So Deagle gets to continue, and Lila just quits Argus at this point. Ray calls a meeting with the mayor and the police and stuff, similar to the one that he was at with the alderman, to be like, yeah, we gotta stop hunting the Arrow. And the mayor's like, why? I'm supposed to call off a manhunt because some billionaire changed his mind? No, this man's still a menace. And the Arrow shows up and kills the mayor and puts Ray in critical condition. Really not helping the he's a menace thing, but you know, we're trying. We're trying. Oh, goodness. So Lance goes on a press conference and calls in a warrant for the Arrow's arrest and reinstates the anti-vigilante task force. Well, it was only gone for a couple months, but they still have all the paperwork ready. And the team keeps trying to confront the League, but the police keep showing up. Before the police show up, Roz says, you can either accept this offer or you can spend your life in prison. And Oliver thinks he means like a League prison until the police show up. And he's like, oh, I get what you're saying. Like, I can either go with you or you're not going to stop hunting me unless I'm in prison, basically. The team are able to escape the police. Thank God. They all like scatter basically and run until they lose them. And then they come back to the Arrow cave. Lance is kidnapped by Roz, and Roz is like, I can tell you who the Arrow is. And he's like, why the hell would I believe you? You're some random dude who just kidnapped me. Roz is like, because I'm going to tell you that the Arrow's the man you always thought he was. He's always been right in front of your face, and you've always had an idea it was him. And the Arrow is Oliver Queen. And you can see on Lance's face, he believes it immediately. He's like, fucking, everything's locking into place. Everything is so clear now. Like, it just makes sense. It just makes sense. Simple as that. Ray is at Starling General, and he has a blood clot in his brain that if it moves, he will die. If it's they've got to take it out. But, like, he's too unstable right now to do surgery, and they're afraid it's going to move before they're able to get to it. And he's like, I have some nanobots. I have some nanotech. You can totally send them in me, and we can remote pilot them and just shrink the damn thing. And then we can get it out. How about that? And the doctor's like, Starling General does not do experimental procedures. So, no. We cannot do anything that's not been proven and tested. And so Felicity and her mom, who actually showed up for support and stuff, her mom distracts the doctors, and Felicity's the nanotechs in Ray's body, and he like it works. They get it out. But at the same time, he does have like a little mini seizure at one point while his body's trying to figure out what the fuck just happened. So, but he's able to get it out. They save him, and the doc's like, how did this just disappear like this? And the mom is like, are you saying my daughter did something illegal? How dare you? And is able to get the doctor to back off. Like, you know, we're not pressing fucking charges. Fucking calm down. All right? Lance holds a press conference and tells the world that Oliver is the Arrow and that the arrest warrant has been moved for Oliver. Ray, freshly blood clotted, tells Felicity that he loves her. And she's like, that is neat to hear. You look hungry. Do you want some hospital jello? I'm gonna go get you some hospital jello, and runs from the room. She even has a little conversation with her mom out in the hallway about all this stuff, and your mom's like, you have two men that you love, and they seem to care about you, and you just need to make a decision. And there's a moment where Felicity's like, you haven't been watching the news, have you? She's like, no, the news depresses me. As you would know that one of the men you probably shouldn't be trying to get your daughter to go after right now when he actively has a whole manhunt for him. But, you know, it is what it is. Oliver turns himself into the police, fully walks into the police station, doesn't let a manhunt finish, just shows up. But Roy turns himself in as the Arrow. He's even in the costume and everything while they're trying to transport Oliver. So now they got 2 Arrows. And it's kind of hard because Oliver has been charged for the Arrow before, so they're more inclined to believe Roy and stuff. And Roy's trying to save Oliver's life, simple as that. But Lance is not going to let them get away with this because he knows who the actual Arrow is. And he gets a search warrant for the basement of the club, and he finds the Arrow Cave. They do not have time to completely turn it into a storage space like Tommy did that one time. But they did have time to wipe down everyone's prints except for Roy's. So they can only prove that Roy he's the only one that they can prove has ever been down there. So, that's fun. Felicity suggests that they ask Ray for help catching the criminals and stuff while Oliver deals with the police trying to follow him. Which Oliver isn't a big fan of, but it's kind of his only option right now. Roy's being catcalled with threats to the Arrow in jail. They're like, you can't hide now, Arrow boy. So that's fun. And to be expected, considering a good chunk of those people were put there by the Arrow or Arsenal or someone on the team. Lance gets a search warrant for Oliver and Thea's apartment. He's really not letting this go. Doesn't find anything. They don't keep anything there. And like his old partner and stuff comes to him and he's like, dude, we can't keep searching these places. Roy has given a full confession that includes like the Arrow Cave being in Thea's basement without implementing Thea in it, and like it's kind of hard to keep doing this when we have a suspect in jail, in custody. You gotta stop. And it doesn't look good for you because he's the captain, which is a role that can change. Ray and Oliver end up working together because the criminal they're trying to take down is actually a metahuman who can do laser eyes. Ray found a way to get his suit to be controlled through brainwaves. So Oliver puts on the headset and like gloves and stuff, and then Ray shows up on the scene and lets Oliver take over the punchy punch part because Ray has no experience, but he does have the tech, and Oliver has a ton of experience, but he can't physically go out there right now. So that's how they work. The meta is able to disrupt the communication between the headset and the suit. So eventually Ray has to finish the job, but like, in prison, Roy is stabbed by a guard and killed. The world thinks. Deagle actually sent in a man who knows how to stab somebody in just the right place where it doesn't actually hurt anything. And they put something on the blade that would slow your heartbeat to make you look dead. Mm-hmm. So Roy's alive, but everyone in the world thinks he's dead now. They send Lance to talk to Thea and be like, he's gone, my dude. Roy leaves town. So that now everyone, other than Lance and the team, think the Arrow is dead. The Arrow couldn't return anymore. Like, he's dead now. He died in prison. We saw it. Ray takes this meta to Star Labs, and he asked the question that's very important and on my mind, and I asked last season, how do they eat? How do they sleep? Where do they go to the bathroom? How are these metas being taken care of? Are you guys taking care of them properly? We got an answer about Slade on Leanne Yu's prison, because I also kind of had the same thing. I'm like, who's taking care of these people? Apparently there are guards that like bring food and stuff, but like, who does it at the thing? And they like cheekily wave it off and move on to a different subject, but like, how are these people eating? Luckily at the end of this season, we did find out that like, they're let loose, so there's no one in there now, but there were people there for almost a year, and like, where were they getting food? Cisco notices on this meta's thing, he might be from Central City. He used to live there, but he was out of town the day the particle accelerator went off. So how the fuck can he be a meta if he wasn't in town when the particle accelerator went off? They bring this up, but they do not reference it in The Flash or the rest of this season. So it must be a next season thing, but the end of The Flash ended with that black hole in the sky, and I have a feeling that's going to be more important than the meta from not the particle. I don't know why they had this discovery now, when in the end of the day, it's not going to matter for a long time, if it matters at all. We're at the point where I haven't watched all of the show, and we're starting to get to where I haven't fully watched, so I don't know how much gets handled. Like, I just don't know. Ra's al Ghul goes to Oliver and Thea's apartment and kills Thea. Mostly. Oliver comes home to find her crawling to the phone and is able to get her to the hospital to get her kind of stabilized. But I mean, like, medically induced coma kind of stabilized. Like, you turn off the machine, she's dead kind of stabilized. Very little hopes for survival. Basically, yeah, if that machine turns off, she's dead. She's just alive because the machine is moving her lungs and heart. But Oliver sees that League has sent up a smoke signal, and he goes there and he says, they tell him that if he accepts the offer to be Ra's, they can bring Thea back to life. Merlin warns that the Lazarus pit, which is what they're going to use, changes a person, and that the Thea that comes out is not going to be the Thea that they know. So, you know, big caution, maybe don't do that. And I think Merlin even says, I love Thea so much, but I would rather see her dead than become a monster from the Lazarus pit. At the end of the day, Oliver decides to do it. So they borrow Ray's jet to fly to Nanda Parbat, and they put Thea in the pit. And she does come back to life. She comes back out and, like, attacks Oliver, and she doesn't know who he is, and she thinks he's dead, but she does know who Merlin is, and is like, hi, Dad, and where's Mom? She thinks Moira's still alive. Roz says the confusion will eventually go away, but, like, there is, like, you really fucked her up, because, like, she didn't know Merlin was her dad until after, you know, all these things, he came back and Moira died, and so she's just really out of it. Pretty much for the rest of the episode. So when they're, like, trying to escape and stuff, she's out of it still and is doing her best to, like, keep up. I think at that point she's just kind of decided, I know I can trust at least some of these people in this group, and I'm going to stay here with them. Felicity and Oliver are, like, saying their goodbyes, because Oliver's going to stay there to be Roz, and they end up having a night together. And they have a drink afterwards, and Felicity drugs Oliver to knock him out. She brings the team in. She's like, we got to get Oliver out of here. We got to sneak out. And Merlin's like, there's some catacombs. Because Felicity's like, you were Merlin's right-hand man, and I've seen enough movies to know there's always a secret exit out of these places. And he's like, there's the catacombs. He's like, ha-ha! I knew it! Luckily for them, Oliver does wake up on their way out, which also, Merlin's like, but it's a rough journey. And then we see the catacombs, and it's a square, fully flat floor with just little bits of bones. And, like, it's not a rough journey. It actually seems to be a pretty straight and flat shot out of there. But all right, I guess. But Oliver wakes up and is able to call off the League men who actually show up on both sides of them and, like, trap them in. And tells them to stand down, and he walks everybody out of Nanda Parbat, and he says his final goodbyes. And they leave on the jet, and Oliver goes back inside. Thea wakes up back at home in her apartment with just her and Merlin, and she's like, what the fuck is going on? What are you doing here? And stuff. And Merlin's like, what do you remember? And fills her in on everything that happened since her last memory, which was Raz attacking her, and he's like, well, he actually killed you, and Oliver gave himself up to be, to get you back to life. Which obviously makes Thea feel great. Oliver is branded, like full-on metal stick, and reborn as Al-Salhim, heir to the demon. And at this point, they call him Al-Salhim, like anyone from the League does. I'm going to keep saying Oliver so I don't confuse anybody. Just so you know, it's also him now, I guess. We see glimpses of Oliver's training. That he's woken up and he's fed a tea that makes him kind of groggy, and he fights, and then he does a couple other things, and then he wakes up and he drinks tea and he fights, and he's and we see at one point Deagle brought in by some of the League's men, and they claim he showed back up to save Oliver. Deagle claims that they've been keeping him hostage, and also Oliver, kills him. And they turn the guy around, and it's actually a League guy, and that in that tea has a drug. And so usually when you see somebody from your past that you have to kill. And Raz asks who he sees, but Oliver doesn't answer. And Raz is like, fine, I don't really need to know. Just, I see that you've killed them, which is all I needed from you. So, yeah, that happens. And Oliver's got a shaved head now and everything. He seems fully integrated in the society. You know what I mean? Raz says your next step to ascension to my title is you have to kill another person who has claim to leading the League without mercy. Cut to Laurel, who's been hanging out with Nyssa, and they've been having a great time. Honestly, it's been so nice. And she tells Nyssa about Oliver accepting the offer. And Nyssa's like, bitch, what? You should have told me this immediately. She starts freaking out because Nyssa knows Oliver has to kill anyone who has another claim to the League, which is her, for being the freaking heir to the demon her whole goddamn life. Laurel wants to protect Nyssa and keep, at least get her to stay alive. Which some people are like, this woman is murdered plenty, and she's like, she was Sarah's, beloved and stuff, and she's been nice and she's been training me, and there's no reason for her to die for no reason. Oliver and Nyssa end up fighting on the same roof that Sarah died on, but they're interrupted by Deagle and Laurel. And Nyssa's a little mad that she got interrupted, because she would rather just fight Oliver and stuff. Oliver kidnaps Lila to get the team to hand over Nyssa, which pisses Deagle off because Sarah, the tiny little baby who's not even a year old, was left alone in the apartment that they live in. During the exchange, Felicity actually smuggles some guns in because they check everybody, and Felicity's like, don't even touch me. And they're like, it's fine. Oliver's like, fine, just leave her alone. And when they bring Lila back over, she hugs Deagle, and he's like, I told Felicity it's just like this time. So she goes to hug Felicity, and she pulls out 2 guns that Felicity had, and poof, they start fighting. The League still ends up getting Nyssa, which is good, I guess, because that's, what they want in the end, but still a lot of unnecessary fuss, but they gets her. And turns out Nyssa was hiding something in her sword. You could twist the handle, and there was a vial inside that she had stolen from Raz. And that was a good chunk of the reason why they also wanted Nyssa back. Oliver is ordered to kill Nyssa. But Raz stops him. He's like, you know what? I can see Nyssa's broken, which is something you better than killing. You broke your enemy. She doesn't need to be killed. But instead, what if we unite our families? Nyssa and Oliver, they're told they're going to get married. That will be the path to ascension. He has to marry Nyssa, do one more thing, and then boom ba bing. He is the head of the demon. there you go. Felicity finally tells Thea that Roy is alive. I know it happened quickly and stuff, but like, Roy died, Thea died, Thea was brought back to life, and then Oliver joined Roz, and it never once did anyone be like, hey Thea, by the way, Roy's alive. He's fine. I know you thought he was dead for this whole time, but he's fine. And he's starting a new life, and maybe you could join him or something, like if you really needed to. Which Thea loves running away when there's a bunch of trouble that she can't handle, so that sounds great to her. Oliver learns that final act that I mentioned, marrying Nyssa, there's one more thing, and then the final act of Ascension is the head of the demon has to destroy their home, wherever their home used to be. So, Oliver is given an Alpha Omega virus, which he dealt with in Hong Kong back when he met the man that, helped save his life, and as well as the man's ex-wife. He met them there in Hong Kong trying to stop the Alpha Omega virus. And Ray's like, you take this virus and we're going to set this loose on Starling, and that's your final act of ascension. We're going to destroy... Like, it was different. Roz talks about destroying his town. And it was like a tiny village in... somewhere in, like, Europe, I think. And, like, it's already horrific enough. But Starling is huge. Starling is a big place. That's a lot. That's a lot you're asking someone to destroy Starling. But Roz reconfirms Oliver will marry Nyssa and then get on the plane to Starling. Like, that's the plans for tomorrow night kind of thing. Thea's plan, packing and joining Roy is going pretty well. But Merlin is like, maybe you shouldn't. And he ends up deciding, you know what, you should. I want you to be happy, and it'll also get her away from the League just in case the stuff with Oliver goes bad. Merlin shows up in Nanda Parbat, and Oliver's like, you're late. So they've been working together, and at least some point, some kind of plan is happening. Apparently, as soon as Oliver knew that, like, becoming Roz would involve destroying Starling, he's been working with Merlin this whole time, because Merlin actually told him a long time ago that was going to be the thing, to take down the League from the inside. So this has all been their plan, and those two have been scheming together, basically, in the background. And now that Oliver finally knows how Roz plans on taking down Starling, contacted Merlin, tells him the thing. But Oliver's so convincing of being brainwashed and stuff that now the team needs some help learning and convincing that Oliver's still good. He kidnapped Lila and left Sarah by herself, and she's just a baby. Oh, yes. Felicity's all distracted and stuff, and Palmer actually uses her distracted state to have her sign a transfer of power papers for Palmer Technology. He doesn't tell her what she's signing. He's like, oh, just some business stuff, vice president stuff. But we, as the audience, see what she signed. And he does not mention this to her at all for the rest of the season. Like, it's only this episode and one more. We're almost done. But, like, he does not tell her about this the whole time. I don't know when he was planning. I know this is a busy next couple, times. It's going to be pretty busy. So I understand stuff happens. But, and they keep going like, we're so busy. But there's whole plane rides. There's like stuff that happens. There's totally time to talk about stuff in between some of these activities for both Thea learning about Roy and Ray telling fucking Felicity that I guess she owns Palmer Technology now. She just doesn't know that. Tatsu, the wife who helped bring Oliver back to life, is the one who was chosen to help convince the team of Oliver's plan, which is an interesting choice because they've never met her. They don't know who she is. she has to tell them who she is. Luckily, Oliver did tell Deagle about Akio, her son, and about him dying. So he has a general idea of this person, but not much. But she is able to explain to them the horrors of this virus that Roz is looking to let loose on Starling. So it helps a little, but they're still very unconvinced. Oliver was way too convincing as a brainwashed person. They all head to Nanda Parbat, and they end up battling with the League, and Tatsu ends up killing her husband. Which also, Tatsu, if you watch the Suicide Squad movie, the one with Harley Quinn, and the Joker shows up occasionally, and Deadshot's played by Will Smith, the woman Tatsu, her superhero persona is in that movie. I don't remember if her name is Tatsu in that, probably, but she's the woman, the Japanese woman with the white mask and the red circle with the sword that eats people's souls. In this one, it's just like a regular sword that's passed through the ages. But in the Suicide Squad movie, they do mention that like her husband was killed with that sword, and she killed her husband in the show too. So at least they're being consistent with some of their character backgrounds, even if some of the other stuff is a little fuzzy. I'm assuming this is in the comics, so I'm assuming relatively loyal. But Adam comes with the ATOM ray suit, and he helps take down the plane that has the bioweapon in it. Or so they think. There's a lot of or so they think this season. There's a lot of scheming and making everyone else believe something's happening while other people know. Roz had an idea that something was going to go down with this plane, and he had the bioweapon on him. He thought the betrayal was going to come from more inside. He didn't expect all of them to show up. And they swear that it's the husband that was the inside man, so that Oliver can still be part of the thing. And Merlin even gives up to Roz that Oliver was the one that told the team about the virus, and he's the traitor. Roz doesn't believe him, and he like talks to Oliver about it, and Oliver even tells him that Tatsu has been inoculated. She already has the vaccine to the virus. By the way, when I mentioned that there's a lot of stuff that's like reminiscent of now, it's a lot of that's in the backstory where the virus originally went off, and there was a lot of talk about vaccine, and they were trying to get the vaccine and trying to avoid the virus, and it's an airborne virus. In the days of COVID, any talk of viruses and vaccines and all that shit is really But, so Roz lets some of the virus go in the cell with the team, and while they're slowly dying, Oliver and Nissa's wedding happens. And, Nissa even, like, tries to slice Oliver at the wedding, but he stops her, and they end up getting married. After the wedding, Roz, Oliver, and Nissa get on a plane and head to Starling. Something's wrong with the plane, though. And they find out Oliver sabotaged it. The team wake up in their cell. Turns out, since Oliver had the vaccine a long time ago, they were able to synthesize something, and Merlin inoculated everybody in the team on their way in. He had this, like, sticky thing on his hand that I guess had it on him. And I think he just had to touch them. I don't know. He somehow got the vaccine in them, and they all survived, which is great. Is a way to further prove Oliver's loyalty to Roz, so that they would be able to do the whole thing correctly. The Flash shows up in Nanda Parbat to free the team. He's there very quickly. He literally gets them out, and then he's like, I have to go. And they're like, well, we could use your help. And he's like, I have to have a serious conversation with Dr. Wells. So I'm assuming this is happening like right before the final episode of the Flash's season as well. Which makes sense. These are supposed to happen about the same time. So he heads off. And Oliver reveals to Roz he's not been brainwashed. He sabotaged the plane, and they fight while the plane is like barely holding on. One of the engines is on fire. Like, that's how much it is. Barely holding on. Roz takes the only parachute and promises he will return for Oliver and he will continue to fight for him if he survives this plane crash. And he leaves. Roz jumps off. He has the virus in hand too, so they're fucked. But, like, why is there only one parachute? Because there was a bunch of people on this plane. There definitely needs to be more than one parachute. What the fuck is up with... It'd be different if, like, Roz, like, threw a couple parachutes out or, like, sliced them and then jumped. That would make more sense to me, that there would be more than one parachute. But, you know, a show's got a show. But seriously, that means only, like, 2 tops people could get out. I don't think you can hold that many more people on one parachute. He still plans on releasing the virus in Starling City. The team show back up in Starling. Like, they make this seem like it takes no time at all. Nana Parbat is, like, not close to Starling. But the team shows up so quickly. So either these things aren't happening at the same time that we're being shown them, or they are, and they somehow grabbed the Flash's super speed and put it on their fucking jet to get back. Because there's no way they got back in this amount of time. It doesn't make any sense. Like, the red streak, like, the white, the yellow lightning and stuff the Flash leaves behind, there's no way Roz didn't see that at all. And, like, didn't find out they were out, so they would have to have been in the air before. None of these things make sense time-wise. They just don't. It's frustrating. How far away are these things? Hey, I'll start on my rant about Iron Heights. Is it in Starling or is it in Central City? They talk about it in both places, and in both places, things happen where people in there get let out. Is it a franchise? Is there a franchise of prisons called Iron Heights? I don't understand. Why? Back to the show, I guess. I'm almost done. I have another rant. I have a couple things to say at the end, but let's finish this out. The team are trying to find a way to stop the virus. They're able to figure out there's going to be 4 drops of it, and, like, they're trying to figure out where, and they figure out the most likely places. They get there, they're trying to fight these guys who have these briefcases. Thea shows up in Roy's outfit. I kind of didn't talk about Thea. Thea did find Roy. They had, like, a night together and stuff, and Roy was like, you know, your signature move is when things get hard, you run away. So Roy leaves again. He quits his job and stuff, and he goes even further into protection and leaves his suit for Thea. And he says, I always thought red was your color anyway. So Thea shows up in that outfit and helps take down a guy. But I mentioned they had a briefcase. The briefcases are empty, and it turns out Raz found a way for when the men's blood get exposed to the air, that's when the virus gets released. So killing them, and he even, like, cut his face open more before he died. Oliver also finds out that Raz isn't just doing the Starling thing to hurt Oliver. He was also trying to kill his nemesis, Damien Dark, who was in town. But as soon as Damien Dark, like, figured out about the plan, he skipped town. He's not even in Starling anymore. He's a step ahead of Raz constantly. Apparently, Raz and Damien Dark were both, like, set to maybe be the heir, and then Raz was chosen, and Dark isn't happy about that. But they do have to figure out a way to fight these guys so they don't let their blood out. Which Merlin does by severing their necks and stuff. Everyone else does it by, like, just capturing them and putting them in a space where they can't get them, like, cut themselves and make themselves bleed. You know, you win some, you lose some. Raz calls Oliver and is like, let's 1v1 fight again. You know, I know a man like you who dies by a man's blade can't help but want to keep fighting him so that he can prove that he can be beat. He can beat him and stuff. Oliver falls for it, and he shows up at a dam, and he's fighting. But the police find out about it, and they shoot Oliver as soon as he beats Raz. So Raz is dead, which I truly think part of the reason Roz has won so many of his fights is because he makes his opponent climb a fucking mountain before they fight. They literally climb up and immediately start the battle. I am assured that if they both got up there and like both had like ample time to rest and then fought, Roz probably would have lost sooner. Because he's still an amazing fighter, but he's not that amazing. He can be taken down. And I truly think part of the reason he's still at the top was because he would exhaust his opponent before they fought. Luckily, Felicity is able to save Oliver before he because he was shot and then he was also thrown off the side of the dam, but she grabs him on his way down because she has the Atom suit on, while Ray is figuring out how to make an inoculate. He figured out how to make the inoculate, or the vaccine, or whatever you want to call it. The thing to make the thing go away. And he figures out a way to miniaturize it and make it airborne. And he even gets credit for it in the news and stuff. They're like, we've heard Palmer technologies are part of the reason why more people didn't die in this horrible bioweapon terrorist attack. So that's cool. At least he gets some credit. Oliver asks Felicity if she will leave Starling with him. He's going to give up being the Arrow. And he knows his mission's going to live on without him. Just also note, when he killed Roz gave him this gold-fingered thing that assigns him as Ra's al Ghul. And Oliver gives that ring to Merlin. Apparently that was part of the deal. And Merlin even says when he gets back to Nanda Parbat and Nissa comes up to him, he's like, the prophecy was that somebody would get stabbed by Ra's al Ghul's sword and not die and become Ra's al Ghul. I was tortured by Ra's with his sword and I'm not dead. So he still technically fits the prophecy, so they can't even refute him. Well, Nissa's going to try, but that's going to be next season's kind of problem. She kind of has to submit for now. She's not happy about it. We see Oliver and Felicity drive off into the sunset. And he's like, you know what? I'm actually happy. And then we see Ray Palmer trying to miniaturize his suit. He's like, a miniature test number 1. Why can't anything work the first time? He goes in to start making adjustments, and he blows up the entire floor. He shows it, and then here, and then we zoom out, and the entire floor of Palmer Technologies that he's on blows up. And that's how we end the fucking season, with Ray blowing himself up. Oh my god, why? What the fuck? That's how we end this roller coaster of a season. There's so much. I want to point out a couple things about, with the Flash and the Arrow now both going, there's a lot of crossover. There was way more with, Arrow characters kind of popping into Flash spaces. Or Flash, when Cisco and Joe visited Sterling and stuff. I love that as a way to differentiate the sets, even if they're using the exact same set, but different shows. The Flash is always brighter than Arrow. Arrow's always darker. They went to the police station and it was brighter when it was on the Flash show than when it was on, there's low lighting versus high lighting. And there's a point, they're definitely not in Central City, but they're at a coffee shop, and you can tell they just didn't want to make a whole new coffee shop set. So they're, Oliver, and I think Felicity is who he's talking, Felicity or Theo, one of the two. He's talking to one of them, and they're at Jitters, but they don't reference it or anything because it's just supposed to be a random coffee shop. And at first I was like, okay, they're just using a coffee shop. It's fine. It's not even that weird. It's fine. Until I saw they were holding their cups logo out and it said CC Jitters on it. If you're gonna use the same coffee shop, that's fine. Just don't show me the damn logo that says Central City Jitters. Come on, man. Like, jitters might even be a chain, but I highly doubt there's CC jitters everywhere. I'm certain it's probably, like, the city that they're in, jitters. Come on. You could have just held the cup in a different way. I know as actors you're kind of, like, taught to hold things label out. Because usually that means the people have been sponsored by the product. Or you get taught label in because they haven't been sponsored and it needs to look generic. So why did they do it label in? I don't understand. Because they could have held it. Because you normally, I'll just use my big water cup that I've had off screen this whole time. Normally they have the logos on both sides. So they're holding it like this with the logo out. But you could easily hold like this with, so you'll see the edges of the logo, but we as the audience can ignore that because we can't read the whole word. So our eyes aren't really going to be fully drawn here. But if the logo is perfectly placed between your fingers, we're going to notice it because you're framing it. You're surrounding it with your hand. And so some people, not all, their eyes are going to move to that. Because there's a text. Our brains can see that there's text and it's being framed by your hand. Why would you do that if they're not in Central City? Because the scene before and after, they're not in Central City. So there's no reason to believe that that's where they are for this one coffee shop scene. And you don't see any other characters that live in Central City. There's just a coffee shop. And that's fine. You can reuse sets. Why are you showing the logo of the other thing? But anyway, I do kind of like that they differentiate the shows so you could see a screenshot of even the same location and you should be able to tell which show it's from. That's really good identity of the two shows and being able to differentiate, and you want your fans to be able to see a screenshot and be able to know exactly where that came from. That's very good. That's the thing you want. So I like that they do that. I do still think it's kind of funny. But that logo thing really made me... I was like... I didn't even write any notes about that. I didn't write a single note about that in my thing. I just remember it. Because it was bullshit. Like, what do you do? Why are you framing it? Just turn your cup a little bit. It's a prop cup. There's nothing in there anyway. Oh. They also do that a lot with, like, the Chinese food bags that occasionally, like, Laurel will bring to her dad. She, like, moves it around. Like, there's nothing in there. You can tell it's like a bag that's held. It's not made of bag material. It's definitely made of something that's more malleable, but will still hold its shape because she just moves it around. It doesn't crinkle. It doesn't do anything. Just like how, like, fake chip bags are made out of a nylon so that it doesn't crinkle, but it also will kind of hold its shape and still work like a bag. I don't know. I've gotten into prop stuff recently, and it's very interesting, but I don't know. The logo thing made me so mad. Like, you could just hold your cup differently. Even if they had a lid, I can't remember if it had a lid, but you could just turn the cup, turn the little bit so that the logo isn't perfectly framed by your picture, by your goddamn fingers. Otherwise, this season was crazy. It was a lot of league stuff. They talked a lot about Sarah. A lot of crazy back to life stuff. This is one of the few times where the flashbacks always relate to the story, obviously. They wouldn't be showing them otherwise. But this is one of the ones where, like, it really related. Like, sometimes Oliver would say a lesson, and then it would immediately show where in the past he learned that lesson. And I know that they're trying to show, like, symmetry of this, but, like, it just makes it seem like Oliver can't learn a lesson the first time around, and he needs to be taught multiple times before it sets in. Because that's what it feels like when you have him say a lesson and then immediately show that he learned it 4 years ago. Like, why? It just looks like he didn't learn it the first time around. Sometimes he says it as like a way of teaching it to somebody else. But all of that aside, I love these shows. They're really great at using their brand identity. They're really good at like not being too confusing yet. We are getting close to the part where I haven't watched them yet, and I know more and more shows are going to start piling in. It has a big potential of getting confusing. But at least at the start, when they're just introducing Flash and Arrow together in the same universe, they do a really good job at making them separate. I really like and appreciate it. These are overall good shows, even though they are, I still say, they are junk food. They are something that like I like to watch when I'm feeling down, and I can just absorb it all in, but at the same time, too much of it is, I get like addicted sometimes. It's a great show. I love it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, follow the channel, follow all the peoples that you can find on this channel and on our website. Link for the blog post is in the description, and please consider donating to the website. It helps pay those of us who present on it like I do, or funding future projects like our Kickstarter that's going to also help fund future projects that's going on right now. So please consider at least checking out our website. We've got a ton of content throughout all of our various socials. All right. Bye, guys.